enjoy the global phenomena of the decline of democracy. As the Report of Freedom of the World in 2019 produced by Freedom House show, most of the Asia-Pacific countries are considered not free, which means their political rights and civil liberty are strictly limited. So this situation of the decline of democracy and restriction of freedom have a severe impacts on human rights situation in the region. For most human rights defenders and pro-democracy activists, their lives are under threat. Between 2017 and 2018, for example, Forum Asia, which is a regional human rights organization, has documented at least 688 cases of violence and abuse against human rights defenders across 18 different countries. These violations range from the use of judicial harassment to arbitrary arrest and detention to extrajudicial killings. For the year 2018 alone, Global Witness reports that the Philippines has the largest number of deaths of environmental and human rights defenders, with at least 30 people killed. Another aspect of the decline of democracy is the rise of fundamentalism. In many countries, the rise of the fundamentalist group has led to attacks on the religion and ethnic minority. It also leads to more and more application of religion-related law that restrict other human rights. The persecution of the Rohingya in Rakhine State in Myanmar is one of the extreme examples of the impact of fundamentalism. The attacks of the Rohingya are done not only by the Myanmar army, but also by the fundamentalist Buddhists. As a result of such an attack, almost 1 million Rohingya are now living in refugee camps in Bangladesh, an unknown number of them taking refuge in other parts of the region.
This is the issue of shrinking space, the decline of democracy in the region. Why I'm talking about the declining space of democracy in Asia. I think first of all, what we see, many countries claim to be democratic, but I would call those countries as illiberal democracy, in the sense that, although those countries actually keep the form of democracy, but the substance is still missing. When I talk about the forms of democracy, I'm talking about democratic institutions. So you may be having like constitution recognizing human rights and freedoms, but implementation is completely different. The second one, the form means that they are in different countries. Those countries you are having elections, even in one party state, they are still organizing elections on regular basis. So you cannot look at democracy from electoral perspective any longer. You look at the case of, for example, the Philippines or even Thailand. After elections in Thailand, you still have the same prime minister who was not even elected. What are more problematic with the declining of democracy in this region is, first of all, is actually a very limited space for civil society for participation, especially participation in the decision-making process. The second one, which is also, I think, problematic, because in a democratic society, we are actually giving importance to issue of, for example, media freedom. We see very well that in many countries around the region, media is either applying censorship or being limited or constrained by different laws of the governments. So limitations has been legalized by the government. So I think very good examples are, first of all, you have security laws still in many countries. You have cyber security law in many countries. You also see commercialization of media, which actually has impact on the freedom of media. These are some of the manifestations of what we call democratic deficit in Asia. Fundamentalism, I think this is happening in some countries. Of course, you see, I could give you maybe a few examples of fundamentalism. One, of course, Buddhist fundamentalism in the case of Myanmar. You see how some groups of Buddhist monks are campaigning against groups of people adhering to another religion, having different race. So we see more and more this kind of religious fundamentalism or religious nationalistic here in the case of Myanmar. We also witness more or less the same situation, but with maybe with some difference, and that is the case of Indonesia. I didn't mention about Brunei because I think Brunei has been always fundamentalist in many cases, especially when Sharia law seemed to prevail in Brunei. I just mentioned about countries in South Asia, but I think you can also see this in South Asia. For example, India. When you see that the process of what I call Hinduization of politics in the country, that's, I guess, amounts to what we call fundamentalism as well.